Hello and welcome to the breakout session, Decommodification. Man, that's a big word. See it spelled out. And interactivity. Are you buying a cake or baking one? We'll explain that in a moment. But first, let's go over some of our guidelines. And our chat moderator, can you give us just a little bit of background about breakout guidelines and what we're going to be doing today?
Hey, my name is Andy. I run the Polaris Mutant Vehicle, and I'm helping out today. So for the chat, if you have a question, go ahead and use the raise hand function on your chat, and we will get to you ASAP. If you're more comfortable typing it, just go ahead and type it there in the box, and I'll get it to Dr. Demma and the rest of the panel for you.
Well, thank you very much. So what are we talking about today? We're talking about uniqueness of offering. Now, this is what got written in the theme camp criteria. And it's one of the, I run the camp support help desk. And it's one of the biggest questions we get. It's like, but what do you mean by unique? So I thought would be a great thing to do this year is to get together people that were part of the group that put these criteria together. And I remembered back when we did it, we had all sorts of discussions, so many discussions about what we meant by uniqueness and some of the other criteria. And let's get them back together. Let's get the band back together and talk about a little bit how we came up with these ideas and what they really mean and some of the stories and background behind them. Let's do some quick introductions. This is a mix of theme camp leads and placers. I'm going by who's the first model panel here. Hepkitten, say hello. Been a placer for years.
The old jaded one. I've been on placement since my second year going to Burning Man. I went to Burning Man the first year I went was 2006. So I've been on the placement team since 2007, which means do the math, how long I've been on the placement team. It's been a while. And I have had the pleasure of placing a good portion of the city over the years. I've placed 3 o'clock, 4:30, 6, and 7:30. So I only have 2 left to get, the whole city checked off as something I've placed. But I got offered the opportunity to be part of this CDS group, Cultural Direction Setting group, where we started talking about the whole criteria that we use to figure out who gets placed and who doesn't. And I think that it turned out to be a really great process. And I was really happy to be a part of it.
And Hepkitten's really. Oh, what happened? I got cut off there all of a sudden.
Wah, wah.
All right. Ratchet, who is now, you're a placer now, aren't you?
Yeah, I am. Hi, everybody. My name is Ratchet. I have been going to Burning Man since, 2016? Though if I like to make everyone feel old, I like to say I wrote my first 10-page paper on the history of Burning Man when I was a sophomore in high school in 2010.
Oh God, I feel old now.
Yeah, I know, right?
So
let's see here. I've crewed with the Icarus Art Car. I've produced Blood Skipper's Urban Decay Cafe in 730 for the last 4 years. I had the lucky opportunity when I was a theme camp lead to participate in Cultural Direction Setting Group 2. And then I've been a placer now since 2020, the longest class of baby placers in the history of the event. And I'm now working with the governess out on 10 and 2 placing large scale sound.
all right, do we have Catnip or not? We lost video.
Yeah. No, you may have lost video. Do you have audio?
We do.
We can hear you.
All right. So I'm not a placer. My first Burning Man was 2011. And that was a kind of significant year in some of the history that we're dealing with, because that's the first year the tickets sold out. And to some extent, the core of what we're trying to do is manage ticket scarcity. And no one likes talking about it, but it kind of is what it is. I honestly don't know how I got involved in the cultural direction setting process. I think, no, I'm back. I think it's because I sort of met some Borg ambassadors who came on an Australian trip, and they sort of hunted out some of the long-standing Australian attendees. And we had dinner, and the next thing that happened was an invite to do this. It was a privilege and an honor, and very, very, very hard. And we'd love to share some of that progress with you today.
All right. And then we have a super secret surprise guest today. Should we reveal?
Do it.
All right, surprise guest.
Reveal
yourself.
Reveal.
Am I revealed? I don't know if I'm revealed.
Not really.
Hello. Oh, there we
Hi.
go.
Hello.
Hi. Hello. Nice to see everybody. I'm Trippi. It's been a minute. And had the honor of kicking off this whole cultural direction setting thing that led to so many fabulous people getting involved. And, now we finally get to really implement a lot of the stuff that we've been working on since 2017, which is nuts. So really happy to be here and talk about this stuff today. So, hi.
I may have done this out of order, but let's go over the process. The process. Hep, do you want to tell us a little bit about this first slide here and what we were going for here with uniqueness of offering?
So when we started doing this, we were looking, I wouldn't say that we wanted to throw out the criteria that we had, because a lot of the criteria we had actually really, really makes sense. But there's a point that I think everybody knows, that we have been going where everybody is getting into this arms race. Everybody has to feel like, theme camps have been feeling like they have to do more, they have to be bigger, they have to be flashier. And it's losing a thing that we discovered, or that we decided in the middle of this whole process, was that that tends to lose some of the best parts of Burning Man that there are, which is the spontaneity and the uniqueness and that weird, crazy, janky thing that you would never find out in the default world, that you can only find at Burning Man. And people were shying away from those things and trying to do the thing that they thought that placement wanted, which then makes everybody do the same thing every year, and not think okay, I'm going to do a bar, but I'm going to do the bar really well, or I'm going to do the bar with this theme, or I'm going to make it special. I'm just going to do a bar. So we wanted to emphasize uniqueness in not just in the thing that you're doing, but you could have a unique bar by giving it a twist and making it really special and feel like it's a thing that you walked into, as opposed to just slamming your glass on a bar like you would do at home.
All right, let's get to the next slide. Do we really need it? I guess we do. Ratchet, tell us a little bit more about what are some of the things that look like a unique offering?
Sure. I think we all know and love the variety of stuff that we see in Black Rock City. And we also see thematic things that play together often. But the first and biggest thing is that it should feel like it's organic to your group, right? It's what's the gift that you want to bring? If we start from the foundation of we're a gift-giving city, that's the core of what we offer as theme camps, is a gift. What feels organic, right? I think the thing that makes something unique is not how big is it, how flashy is it, how many people are running it, but does it feel authentically made and feel authentically given, right? I think that's where we're going to get into this idea of buying or baking a cake. This idea of how do you twist an experience? Hep and I love bars on Playa. We are not going to be the people that say, let's get rid of bars. I think we are the people that are what's the twist on the bar? What's your twist on a bar? What's different about it? How can we make it interesting or different, or something that challenges the way you would traditionally experience something? I think the most important thing here about uniqueness is that sometimes things can get stale and played out. What was cool back in 2011 may not feel authentic to your group anymore. That doesn't mean you have to keep doing the same dang thing though. What can you change up? What can you spin? That's, I think, we should try to celebrate that. And we want to really dive into this idea of celebrating experimentation and creating a culture that feels like we have the capability to do something and try something, and it can fall flat on its face. And in that, there could be some really amazing stuff that happens. And then finally, we really wanted to create an environment and a set of criteria that welcome and support interactivity for underrepresented groups and people at Burning Man, and really challenge the idea that interactivity or uniqueness or creativity looks or feels a certain way, in that we're a global event with a mass cross-cultural offering. And just because Burning Man has ended up in the American Museum of Art in DC doesn't mean that this is an inherently American event, and that we can do something that is very unique to whatever locale or representation that you're approaching yourself from.
All right, skipping ahead again. So, Catnip, tell us a little bit more about what we're going to be looking for here. And maybe it's a good time to explain what the heck do we mean by baking a cake?
So one of the things that we struggled with a little bit through this process was that intention matters. And two people or two camps can do exactly the same thing but with different intentions. And we tried to figure out what that actually meant. And I kept coming back to this guy who used to work for me, who was actually kind of douchey, but he did one very cool thing. So every birthday that any of his direct reports ever had, he would bake them a birthday cake. And he was at pains to explain to me that he didn't buy them a birthday cake, he baked them a birthday cake. And to me, that kind of encapsulated what we were trying to deal with here, in that, you know, the net result may be an identical cake. It may be a cake that's jankier, but whether you've made it or whether you've bought it is kind of totally the point.
All right, let's go on to the last slide, which in great Playa fashion, I realized probably should have been the first slide, because let's go back to where this all came from. And one of the things I did in preparing for today is I went back through some of the notes we had with the cultural direction setting group. And there were dozens of meetings, hundreds of hours of video, and lots of notes. And this is just to give you an idea of part of our creative process here happening in real time with a Google Doc. And you can see people's comments on the side here. For instance, that last bit about doing something that would celebrate an underrepresented group. That wasn't there until we had a certain diversity group go through everything and say, hey guys, maybe this would be good to add. We went through so many different revisions. So now we're going to back up a little bit, and just real quick for folks that may not know what this cultural direction setting thing is, we thought we'd ask the person that started it off, Trippi, what was this cultural direction setting, and what was it set about to try to achieve?
Yeah.
And we can take the slide off now. They've seen enough of our, and we'll just go to our faces.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I can see other people who are here. Hi. Yeah, so cultural direction setting, just a quick refresher, it really started for two reasons. And I think this group carried a really important thing all the way through that we're getting to now experience. And I'm really excited to experience on Playa this year. So, but back in 2017, coming in, the two big areas that were of concern for me when I became placement manager were plug and play. Was an ongoing issue, but was at a pretty boiling point kind of place in 2017. You could argue it was boiling for years, but that's when it was extra hot. And then also just the placement process feeling like it really needed a refresh, that a lot of things hadn't changed in a long time and a lot had changed about the city, and so there were some inconsistencies, some kind of a lot of questions from the community, some things needed to get updated, but it was unclear how we were going to do that and what the right way to go about that was going to be. And so, I'm a facilitator by nature. That's probably the longest standing thing I've ever done, and so my question was like, how can we get the community involved in this and not just be placement behind the scenes, changing things up. And that led to a number of things. It led to bringing together a group, initial group we called Phase 1, The phase 1 group was theme camp leads and Burning Man staff coming together. A big survey, which some of you might remember from 2018, I think, so long ago now, and about 5,000 people really wrote in a lot about what they were thinking about the culture, how it should change, what was wrong, where it could go, what challenges, we were facing, in our camps and the community. And so the first group really took all that in and created the cultural vision that's still up there and kind of became the guiding perspective of where we wanted to go. Because before that, there was a lot of crashing into each other that was happening because there wasn't a clear vision. There wasn't a clear direction of where things should go. And the vision's pretty loose, right? Like there's got to be a lot of space because we're burners. We've got a lot of different ways of doing things. It can't be too tight, but we needed something to kind of help steer. Especially things like criteria, which are actually pretty specific. And, not have anything to guide that with was tough. So that happened first. That was released in 2019, early 2019. And then we got into the nitty gritty, which was phase 2. And that was about 80 people, again, mostly theme camp leads coming together, placers, some Burning Man staff, all coming together into distinct working groups to actually take this vision, take all this higher level stuff and put it to task. And this group, you're seeing here was group number 2, focused on the theme camp criteria, which we knew really needed an update based on this vision that we spent so much time on. So you have the folks you see here. There were a couple other folks involved, Spacious, who's from Anahasana Village and a DC regional contact. We had Hazmat, who's a part of Burning Man staff, Hot Water, who's on the placement team, Level, who's now the placement manager, and Skidoo, who was on the placement team as well. So we had a nice group, big camps, small camps. And part of the choice of bringing this group together was we liked to bake in the tension and to this group's dismay sometimes intentionally chose people like Catnip's trying to remember, like, how did I get involved with this? I was like, we're talking about criteria. We need an international perspective. Camps that have to come from as far as Australia are facing different challenges than camps coming from San Francisco, right? Like we need to make sure that we have folks in the mix who are going to bring those perspectives to the group. Big camps, small camps, people who think the criteria should be really specific, people who think there should be practically no criteria, right? Like put it all in the group, put it in the cauldron, mix it up, get it hot, right? And see what happens. So that was really our process, to come through this. And no
one died.
And no one died.
Barely. No one died barely.
Barely.
There were some arguments, but
oh yeah, there were some arguments. What I thought was interesting is the criteria started on whiteboards here at Burning Man headquarters, which I get to come and be at today. It was really cool. And we distilled that into notes, and those got distilled amongst our group. And then we'd show it to another one of the groups, and they would say, we don't like this, and this. Oh, God, throw it away, start all over again. Then we showed it to placers, and they said, well, we don't like this, and that, throw it away. Take it in. Showed it to the diversity group, and they said, have you thought about this, and this? And so it slowly distilled its way through people saying, well, what about this? And what about this? And what about this? And it was a months-long process that we finally came down. And some of those words were very careful. We would spend hours. Is this the word we want? Or
debating.
Is this the word? And really debating it. So I encourage folks just to look through that. It's all very, very purposeful. But at the end of the day, this horrible example, but I remember some legal thing about, what is foreign, it when you see it. And that's the uniqueness. It when you see it, because my camp, if you just say, oh yeah, we do snow cones, and that sounds like, well, everyone does snow cones. But as is the way we try to do it. We've got music going on. It's a different theme every day. We always try to work the Burning Man theme into what we do. And then we have this stupid thing we do that someone did the first year. And we had a long queue for the snow cones, and he saw some folks he thought were cute. He's like, if you show me your junk, you get to cut to the front of the line. And then happened in 2008, it became a thing, and that just became our thing. And that's what we try to tell folks is when you're thinking about, oh, I want a bar, or I want to do a snow cones, or I want to serve food, how do you make that really, really uniquely your own? And it can be tacky branding. We have flamingo cups, t-shirts, all the chairs in our camp have Paradise Motel on them, and we just make it super duper tacky. And as when we get to the to asking folks to tell us about your camp, I'd love to hear some of the unique things that your camp does. But anything else about the process, Hep, do you want to throw in here, or what do we learn along the way about what uniqueness really means?
I would say that something that we really came to after a lot of discussion and back and forth and whatever is, how do you make something an experience as opposed to a, how's your camp making the thing something that somebody is going to actually go home and talk about, as opposed to, oh yeah, I just went and got a drink at a bar. You're not going to talk about that when you get home. But if you're something unique and crazy and whatever happens when you're at that bar to get that drink, or some interaction, some actual interaction and experience happens for that, it's something that, and I mean, not everything is going to be something that you're going to talk about. And there's also those experiences where you do sit down at a bar and you just have this amazing conversation with whoever's tending bar that, and it has nothing to do with the theme camp. And I mean, that's super cool too, right? So like, it's how do you make it an experience that somebody actually like remembers?
I think there's an interesting tension with that. I think this is something that we talked a lot about. And I mean, when Dilemma says that this was a process, I really hope someday we can publish the data book of all of the volumes of documents. I mean, I think at the end of the day, we probably, just from group 2 alone, probably have close to 500 pages of writing and notes, thinking and editing, how we distilled it down to this. Because there's an inherent tension, right? You say you want something that's highly unique and interesting and that people are going to remember. Okay, that thing takes resources. It takes time, it takes energy, it takes money, it takes people power, and then it takes tickets, right? And on the other hand, we don't want to be encouraging an arms race. We don't want to tell camps you have to build it bigger, you have to do it better, differently, spend more resources on it. So how do you hold these two things in tension, right? And I think this is where we got to this idea of uniqueness, where it's not so much about how much power you put into your stereo system or how many drinks you serve at the bar. It's what's the twist that makes this unique and interesting, and that's back to this idea of authenticity, that's authentic to you and what you want to gift and bring. And trying to carry that narrow road, right? And it's not perfect yet. We're still experimenting with this. Is the first year that we're deploying the criteria. And I think it's really interesting from the placement side of the house now about how we're thinking about things.
Something you said about the process triggered something in my mind around one of the cycles we went through, and people were giving us feedback was, well, what if the thing that you're asking people to do is beyond the comfort level of someone, and started getting into consent? I remember that there was one place to get a drink. They wanted to take a little cattle prod thing and on your butt. And what if you, so that we built that into what the criteria say is, you should have something fun to do, but you should have sort of an escape clause. You can do this, or you could do something else, or you can sing a song or whatever. And it was interesting to that, thinking about all these crazy ideas we have on Playa. Extroverts think, sure, I'll like do all these crazy things for a drink, but other people may not want to do that. So
Dilemma, I think you triggered something for me too. The whole consent process, which I think was fascinating to be going through, because if you read the old criteria, there was nothing about consent in there. And I think we spent a lot of time talking about consent, and not just consent in terms of bodily autonomy, but consent to do activities and other things. And I'm really excited to see how that's already been trickling and changing things. And to your point, the idea of escape valves, also just camps thinking through and having clear plans about how they want to actively engage their participants in their interactivity versus just statically assuming someone wants to do something, which I think can create really strong and healthy containers.
What do we think about the escape clause of just moving down the road? Because there are a lot of things to do. And if something's not your jam, just move on.
Also, Trippi, I heard you trying to cut in there though.
No, I think Hepkitten's going to speak to that. I was going to go somewhere else. Go ahead.
No, sorry, my husband just got home. I'm talking to him.
Oh, just kidding. Yeah, the thing I'd say on that is like, it, yes, and, right. I definitely had my experiences at Burning Man where there's a lot of pressure, right, being thrown at you to do the thing, and people are kind of getting into it and prodding you, and depending on your comfort, you may or may not feel comfortable pushing back, right? And it's circumstantial, right? Like your experiences with that kind of stuff, right? Like, so, I think, yeah, like you can move on for, that's always an option at Burning Man. We have a lot of freedom there, but, social pressure is also at Burning Man. It's not like that's not there too. So all those factors are there.
I would also say to that, like, I was thinking when you guys were saying this about consent, that part of this is, I think we had a good group of extroverts and introverts in our group, because I'm an introvert, which most people do not know. I'm mostly, yeah, I know, Ratchet makes the face. I put myself in the position of accepting the job as the volunteer gig as a placer, because it took me out of my comfort zone, and it made me comfortable to go and talk to camps and go into camps that I would not be comfortable walking into without a reason. So I'm one of those people that if you're like, I'm not always going to be up for that thing, like, get prodded or get spanked or whatever and get a drink, and I'll be like, yeah, no, that's not my jam. Like, have at it. I have no problem with anybody else doing it, but like, I don't really want to do that. And if you try and I've been in camps like my first couple of years where people were trying to pressure me into doing the thing, I didn't want to do it. And the only reason they backed off is because my friends were like, yeah, no, she said no. Mm-hmm. Yep. So like, I think that was another part of like big camps, small camps, we had all different personalities, but we also have the introvert extroverts in the middle of the whole process too, so that we could make sure that like, and I'm not even the one who brought up consent. It was Ratchet, and I love that it got added in.
Mm-hmm. Another theme just to pull out here, that it's funny, like this was so long ago and it's all rushing back a little bit, right? But I think just to speak to uniqueness, maybe a little more philosophically, but I think this is at the heart of why I'm just so excited to see what Burning Man's like this year with this criteria added in, to the mix, is, our, decommodification, yes, it's principle, et cetera, but our world is so commodified. We're so used to these cookie cutter experiences. Like right now I'm moving from Boston to Chicago, and, like I'm going across the country, I'm going to all these little hotels and these little gas stations. It's like all the same shit, right? Sorry, excuse my language, right? Over and over and over again. We're so used to these things. And Burning Man's the one place, at least in my life, where it's like the unexpected happens, it's the opposite. The whole thing is flipped, right? And we're just like, whoa, what could this be? And those are some of the most amazing moments. And we need a place, I think, in our, really commodified world to express our, our wild dreams, our authentic selves, the things our group can come up with. Like, I remember back in 2014, I was starting a new camp. We had a new group of about like 25 people. We all gotten into a room and we're like, what's our theme going to be? And it was this really fun brainstorm. We had several ideas on the table, but back to that, like it's a organic to your group, kind of thing. It was this like emergent, organic kind of process of coming up with our theme, coming up with our offering, all the different things we could do, who could do what gifts could they have, what funny, weird things are, we into that we could bring to Burning Man. And that really shows when, the camp's still around. It really shows when you go to that camp still, that I'm no longer a part of, but it's got that, just oozing with that. It's really a unique little fun thing. And the last little memory that's popping up, just of a really funny example. I remember before we had the uniqueness as a criteria, placement, we're looking through our camp questionnaires, we're reading all kinds of stuff, right? And I remember there was a camp that people were, I forget what sector or what, it was a long time ago, like was kind of like a little odd, people like were not sure about. And the camp was, I'm probably misremembering to some extent, but it was like a camp that had like a monkey hut, and they were gonna get these little animatronic hamsters and like put like 100 of them in the monkey hut, and you would walk in and it would be this like really weird experience of these little hamsters like talking at you and all this stuff. And some people were like, what is that? And I was like, that's unique. Like I love rodents. I love guinea pigs. I'm a weird like hamster rodent person. I was like, I want to go do that. That sounds amazing. Like how weird. Like when in the default world would you ever see that? Never, right? Like that's so cool. And some people are going to be into some things and some people aren't, like, and that's the beauty of it, right? Like you might be like, that's no thank you.
And some of the discussions we had were around don't be afraid to fail, because some of the most interesting things on Playa end up being spectacular failures.
Might get stuck with dust inside of them and they stop working, and oh no, the hamsters are gone, right? Like that happens too. Right?
and don't be afraid to build it up over years. You don't have to do it all at once. That became a prevailing theme as well, is that you do not have to do it all at once. And I remember we did talk about some of the more controversial camps. I think it was in 2019, then there was a write-up around Barbie Death Camp, and people were saying, oh my God, what are they doing here? And the first thing I thought was, they've been doing it for 20 years. Someone finally noticed. These are conversations we had. What is pushing the limits too far,
Well, I think the other thing that came up with the idea of the criteria, and what I'm struck by, Trippi's entirely right, I'm having a whole bunch of stuff is flooding back after being not enmeshed in this for 2 years, is this idea of we talked a lot about the idea of burner culture shifting in a lot of ways, but particularly the idea that theme camp leads really want strong actionable feedback, right? And the criteria didn't support the idea of strong actionable feedback in the way it was currently written. I think what's so exciting about the criteria now is that we now have a better sense of a system where people, through the placement questionnaire and then through the back half of the process, we can start to see what a feedback cycle might look like, to really help camps dial in what they want. Because if we want to build something over a long period of time, we only get one shot every 365 days to do it. It's not like we're doing this every other week. And so if we want to encourage a culture of experimentation and failure, we also need to encourage a culture of feedback. And I think that's one of the things that has me most excited about where the criteria has headed, is that it gives us the model for what an effective feedback cycle might look like.
And we're starting new things. The post-burn, camps give a post-burn report and say, hey, this is what worked, this is what didn't work, this is the things we did, this is the lessons we learned. Camp Survey Squad will come take pictures of your cool stuff, and so we have it's there that all the effort you put in, someone noticed and got your feedback about the placement process and other things. So I feel like it's coming along, and oh, there are other people here, aren't there? I felt like we just got sucked back into one of our meetings.
We did. I gotta say a couple of things before we go to questions though. First, I'm really, really proud of the fact that we tied the criteria to our 10 principles, which it never was directly associated before. And that's something that we very consciously did so that we can have theme camps actually see, like, this is the principle that we're talking about. I think that's really cool. And I also think that it's really important to know that the feedback form we're asking for after the burn is an opportunity for theme camps to tell us what went wrong, what went right, what you're thinking about doing next year to either improve it or scrap that thing for whatever reason. It's not a way for us to judge you on your things. It's a way for you to have a feedback loop for your own self too, and improve your camp as you want to improve your camp, or keep things the same or whatever. But it's just a way to give information, because there's always that thing, you're like, I'm going to build a Tesla coil, and then it falls apart halfway there, or your stuff gets stolen, or you can't find the last part to make it work, or it just doesn't work on Playa. And you can tell us about that, about how you struggled with it and all that kind of stuff. So it's not just about us trying to punish you for something that doesn't work, but allowing yourself to fail. And that gives you the ability to tell us what happened, as opposed to us walking by and going why is that Tesla coil not working?
Yeah. And that's something we discussed a lot. It's there's a huge difference between well-meaning, energetic people that made a giant Tesla coil that just did not work, and so maybe nothing's going on, and folks that are the concierge camps, and we've got these feedback loops that we can find these out and people can discuss it out. So Leslie, how are we going to do this?
And to be fair about to be fair about the Tesla coil, it did work until Tuesday.
And it looked cool anyway. So, I mean,
Whose
what are you
Tesla
gonna
coil
do?
are we
Yeah,
talking about right now? I would just like to note that Sexton's Tesla coils to my sister camp with worked all week because it drove their neighbors absolutely bonkers, which you can put in your feedback form and tell them and tell placement you do not want to camp next to Tesla coils in the future.
All right. Well, guys, there are other people here. So what happened is you could tell this group worked together, fought together, screamed at each other, for a while. And I'm sorry, for a few
Like at
minutes.
a camp sometimes,
I'm sorry, you just it was like you were looking in at us going right back into that mode. So we're going to try to figure out, how do we pull the rest of y'all into our crazy little group, because that's part of what we wanted to do with cultural direction setting. It started off with smaller groups, phase one, and then we had like all these other groups, a lot of people, theme camp leads, staff, placers, and whatnot. So let's make this cultural direction phase 3 right now, and we want to hear from y'all. And I'm going to let Andrew figure this out. Do you have a question about the process? Do you have a comment about the things we've talked about? Suggestions what you think would make about uniqueness? How would you rewrite one? What's something you would have added to the uniqueness rules? Let's start it up. Either raise your hand with the raise hand function, not actually raising your hand, so we know you want to talk, or if you want to ask a question in the chat, it'll get read out loud. So come on, pretend like you're part of this crazy little group that's talking about theme camp criteria, about how to make. You're there now. You're phase 3. What would you want to do? What do you want to? What is your ideas?
We do have one question to start from Jen Wren, Mythmaker. How to manage a large camp worth of cars with frontage that stays inactive? Stays inactive. How do they keep it interactive? Dealing with cars in your frontage.
Mm-hmm.
Don't put cars in your frontage.
No, they meant art cars. Who wants to take this first?
No, I didn't mean art cars. Sorry to be. So maybe it's easier if I talk. Is that okay?
Yeah, totally.
So what I'm dealing with is that Mythmaker has a significant portion of its interactivity is performance, and we have a mead hall, and we have a big dome, and we have some workshop spaces, and we don't want it all to be sitting right on top of each other, because clearly the music at the mead hall would not be conducive to maybe a healing workshop going over at the other side. But no matter how I work the placement map, there seems to be at least 2 or 3 bumpers that are going to be showing, because even though I'm running all my cars around the back as much as possible, there's still a few spots where I can't quite hide them. Now, we have a few people who've offered to make car costumes, and I'm just wondering, to make it part of sort of the walk into camp. But do you have any suggestions that could be better than that?
Car costume sounds awesome, because a lot of people don't even think about that. We recommend, usually when people have this question about how to do things with their cars, is first of all, one of the things that's really important is lighting. Even if you just put like a rope light, solar rope light on the ground, just to make the street less dark and feel more safe, because you know how that can be when you're walking down some weird street in the middle of the night and there's no lights. It can feel a little bit scary. So having lighting is really important, but car costume sounds awesome. And like, that's what we recommend. Do something that's like arty. Like, you have somebody in your camp that's what they do. Like, do something that you can make it just prettier to look at and give it a little bit more curb appeal than just, and whatever that means to your camp, that's going to be different everywhere. I mean, like, that, I don't know if you've seen the Camp Hardly. There's a camp in 430 called Hardly, and what they do is they have this string that goes, it's like 8 feet tall, and it's just a bunch of like cut fabric that's hanging down like the whole length of their backside of their camp. And it's not like, somebody drew some masterpiece or something, but it is a lot more interesting than seeing a bunch of cars when you're walking down the street, and defines their space. So whatever that means to your camp.
Hepkitten, could you you answered a question in the chat about refining interactivity. Could you
Yeah,
expand
you
on
said
that?
somebody posted that they said that they thought, I think the question was something to the effect of sounds like we're going to have to up our interactivity in 2023, like to meet with things. And that was kind of the opposite of what we were trying to achieve with this criteria. Is we don't want people to feel like they're in an arms race, that they have to be fighting against whoever to try and get placement, but we do, but refining to me, like that says, you've got an idea, you're trying it out this year. Next year you can do it a little bit better because you know what went wrong and you know what went right, you know what people appreciated and what people kind of like didn't even come in for, or they came in for but maybe they weren't as excited about. That's what I mean by refining. Like you can figure out the thing that you're excited about that other people seem to also like, or you can just make it a little bit smoother process to make it a better version of whatever that thing was, as opposed to a more expensive version.
That was the last question we've had so far. If anybody had anything else, or
You know, and when we were talking, Hep, it made me think of just make it fun, you know? And every year we try to have a party that is somehow related to the theme. And some years it gets, it's a real stretch. It's a real stretch. For Evolution, we did a mutants and mad scientist party. I don't know why I would think that a mad scientist party would be cool, but that's what we did. And then we tied that into Evolution because, you know, it just kind of worked. I see, during Carnival of Mirrors, what did we do? I'm trying to remember what the party was. Oh, gypsies. We thought, oh, gypsies. So we had a gypsy party. And then how did we get the I Dream of Jeannie party? I don't know. I can't even remember what the theme was. But you know, just usually, okay, so first of all, get real drunk with all your camp mates and think about it. And just, it can be stupid, but you know, if it's just something that everyone thinks is cool and funny, just go with it. And don't think of it as an arms race. Just think of it as, what could we do that would be most fun for us? And you know what? If you do something that's the most, you think is most fun, people are going to love it. I guarantee, even if everything blows
there's a
up.
different way of saying what Dilemma's saying too, which is that a phrase that, I mean, I struggled with, to be quite honest, as someone who ran a large camp for a long time and participates on a substantially large art car, is celebrate the small and the janky. And it's something I've come really around to, which is, I would much rather see someone do something really cool, have a lot of heart and soul in it, and that they love it, it makes their eyes light up, and it's janky as hell, excuse my language, versus you've brought 90,000 watts to the playa, but it killed you and you look soul dead when I come up to hang out with you, right? Like, I think the goal for 2020, and at least out of G2, and I'm putting on my Group 2 hat and taking off my placement hat, which was, how do we help people have more fun? How do we get theme camp leads out of camp? Like, I don't know if this resonates for everyone else, but there have been years when I haven't left camp and I have just crushed camp all day, every day, keep getting the interactivity out. It's like, that's an unsustainable performance culture. Like, it's an unsustainable culture that will burn out our core cultural leaders. And that's an element that I don't think we've talked about yet, was that a lot of what we were talking about in G2 wasn't just how do we increase the uniqueness, it's how do we help theme camp leaders enjoy being theme camp leaders again, and enjoy the thing that we spend a lot of time and spend a lot of our own personal hard-earned money on and want to have fun with, and not feel like we're just suffering and miserable in the middle of the godforsaken desert.
Well, I would hope that part of this too is to encourage theme camp leads to find the joy in what they're doing. So even if you are stuck in camp, quote unquote stuck in camp, because you're stuck in camp because you don't think anything outside of your camp is more fun. Like,
And get out of the way.
Like I mean,
know,
so I have to tell the story though, because it's we talk about janky and weird and whatever. Like, I laughed because there was a comment in the plenary season, a session, because somebody said, I think it was it said something about awkward blah blah blah, and somebody said awkward hug camp, ha ha ha. And I actually ran an awkward hug camp years ago because we were sitting in placement and it was just like my staff camp. and we were joking around about camp names in like mapping weekend 2, and I said awkward hug camp, ha ha ha, and we all laughed about it. We made it the name of our camp. We actually made it the theme of our camp. So basically you would come into our camp and we'd give you a stupid awkward hug, and like it was a thing, but we enjoyed it and it was fun, and I think the people who came into the camp enjoyed it too. That's like stupid and janky and whatever, but it was still fun for us. So like we didn't, we were hanging out and having a good time doing it, and we still do it now in our new camp. So
And something that got triggered with me about camp leads is we often have these visions, these grand visions of, I want to do this thing, it's going to be exactly like this, and everyone's going to love it. And sometimes they don't. And it's good as a lead to get to have mutinies and have your folks just say, no, we don't want to do that. We want to do something else. For radical rituals, going back through our camps wiki to see what events did we do. Radical rituals. I wanted to have a total radical 80s party, but nobody liked that idea. And somehow someone said, for a ritual, we're going to have a sexy Old Testament party. And I thought, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard of, ever. I'm going to have nothing to do with it. And people came up with the most interesting costumes that year. And it was freaking amazing. So sometimes just getting out of the way of your people, but you've got folks that have ideas, usually it's the second years that want to do everything. I think I want to make a Mecha Godzilla with lasers and fire. You go for that. Yeah, let's see what you can come up with. But just getting out of your folks' way. And I was thinking about something that I would do with the camp leads towards the end of the week, is we'd go walking around the neighborhood and look at what other folks were doing and see if we could crib good ideas off of them, which is basically, I just want to doing a quick shift over Sticky Beak. What is this camp survey squad that you're talking about? And tell me more about that, can you?
I'd better be able to, and thank you for the lead in. Delaware is not mentioning that he's part of the leadership team for that too.
I kind of invented it.
Pardon?
It's a long story. You don't need to
okay.
Later. Beer story.
It's just a bunch of regular burners from across the playa who volunteered to actually go out and visit some theme camps for us. There's, as I mentioned, there's 1,200 theme camps. I don't remember how many places there are, but it's a whole lot less. So you can imagine, just how much time the places would have to go out to visit every last one of them. So we send teams out in teams of 2, and we give them an iPad and say, hey, go ask a few questions, which are usually things like, what's the neighborhood like? Is there anyone in there? Is there a camp in their neighborhood that's doing absolutely awesome? Great interactivity. Tell us about it. And they're not secret. They're not spies. They're not police. They're just random burners who go out and say, hey, what's going on? And they get to meet some of the leads, or the senior folks in these camps, and find out how things are working. And then they come back and tell us. And so, if you've got that little camp that's out there on the outskirts, and it's just so weird and it's so amazing and it's blowing everybody away, we get to hear about it, and then we can go tell a placer, hey, make sure you go visit that one, that kind of thing. So, there's a lot there that we want to encourage, and there's not really any requirements for signing up. I mean, we've had a lot of TCOs be part of our squads. We've had, folks encourage their campmates to go do it, and absolutely, we can. The more the merrier. So,
Sticky Vic, just between the two of us, I'll tell you a secret. Don't tell anyone. The real reason that I want to do Survey Squad every year is it forces me to get out of my own damn camp, and I have to visit other camps. So that's like the secret real reason that I keep doing it, is because it's like, no guys, I gotta go. I gotta survey some camps today. It gets me out of my own camp. Looks like we have some questions.
Only one, but that's my reason too.
Okay, shh. Don't tell anyone. That's our secret.
Dilemma. Let's take this question that I know Hep's already kind of trying to answer in chat, but let's talk about what Vibration for Life just asked, because I think it's a good one, about this idea of where we place open camping and the tension between open camping and theme camping, and why don't we just put every single camp on the map, which was something that
we talked about
that a lot. I don't know, like, actually throw the Trippi, because she hasn't talked much yet.
Oh man.
Trippi, why don't we put, as the former manager of placement, the assistant AD of the event, why don't we put open camping in the center block
anymore.
Oh my gosh. I mean, Hep kind of, nailed it in the chat
No
already.
pressure.
Right? Yeah, it's, it's tough. I mean, I feel like we've tried many different ways, right, of having the polarity of the city kind of reverse a bit, right? Because of the layout of the city and the open playa and the man, like the energy kind of gets sucked down toward the Esplanade, it's just kind of the nature of the design. And so we've, over the years tried many different versions of pulling the energy and the vibes back. And there are camps that love to be, closer to the open camping, closer to walking camping, closer to the mountains, closer to, kind of some more quiet. So there's always a nice mix, right, of folks wanting to be in different places is the good news. But I think the fun, I've camped in open camping in the past, right? Like the fun of it is the total exploration, the total kind of like grassroots nature of it. And when you mix that in with the reserved and placed camping, as Hep kind of said, like you just end up with land grabbing, you end up with like fights over where the territory is open. No, this is my camp. And just the timing of the event. We have camps coming in all week long with just little blue flags as the way to designate that there's supposed to be a placed camp there. And it's not enough for, a small team to be able to manage that flow, basically. So I think the exciting news is I think this uniqueness is going to be fun this year in this sense, right? And I think, having a greater expectation, hopefully culturally as a city of like, what unique, weird experience might I encounter? And I may be used to going and parading off to the Esplanade or to the open playa, but hey, let's go check out and go back. Let's see what's going on the back streets. Because at least in my experience, of Burning Man over the years, some of the craziest shit's happening, in the back of the city. So we want to encourage that flow to go every direction so that open camping gets to have some of the peace and quiet that a lot of open campers appreciate, honestly, and also gets to have a lot of fun. So that's kind of the compromise that we have.
And we did talk a lot about like this part of the arms race too is, if you're doing something, it has to go in the book. It has to be on your placement questionnaire, or it won't count, and all these random weird little things. And I tell folks in my camp, like, oh, we don't really want to put it in the book. We just want to come do it. Is that okay? Yes, do these random things. There's a camp that may or may not exist. It's probably just a myth, but I've heard of a camp that doesn't get placement, and they come and they're a bunch of fishermen that bring tuna on playa and just sear it for like 3 seconds on either side and serve it. Now, they may or may not exist. They probably don't because, health regulations, but they never get placed, and they somehow manage to do this hypothetically every year, and it just happens. So that's part of the uniqueness and weirdness is not everything has to be completely planned out, put in the book, put in your, just do it. Just do it for fun. You don't have to be a placed camp, although it's getting harder and harder, but, you can be an unplaced camp and do things.
It
you can do
was
the
for
weird
years,
things.
That camp was a placed camp for years and years and years.
I'm just going to piggyback off of what Demma said, though, because I do think it's an important thing to note that based on the new criteria, if you are filing a place camp questionnaire, please tell us about all the things you're doing in great detail. The more detail, the better. The times you think you might do it, even if you don't actually intend to do it on those times. It just makes life easier for everybody. Like giving a 2-word explanation of what you're doing, even just in addition to the time it's going to happen, and there's a schedule. Trust me, that makes the placers' lives a lot easier as we're sitting there reviewing hundreds of PCQs. It makes everyone's lives easier for helping to figure out.
Oh, and my PCQ this year, I said we may or may not have a speakeasy, depending on whether we bring enough booze. And if it happens when we damn well feel like doing it. So there.
Yeah,
and just FYI, PCQ stands for Place Camp Questionnaire because that's an acronym we use all the time.
You mean,
that's not
you
something
mean the application, right?
Questionnaire. I see a hand from Jen Wren.
Save me quickly.
Yeah, just going back to what you were just talking about, I did post the question, we tell you everything we're thinking of? And so we have a really large camp, and that's an important question because where there was some worry that we weren't sure which day or exactly how it was going to roll out as we got closer to it. And some people thought it was better for us to not tell anything until we know for sure. So it's okay for us to let you know all the dreams, all the visions, all the ideas that we've got, as this is what we're aiming for. This is okay.
So I'm going to answer that because you are a 6 o'clock camp and I'm the 6 o'clock placer.
Okay, great.
I'm the
Thanks.
one who has reviewed your questionnaire and sent you an email, by the way.
Yes.
Yes. Give us all the information. Keep in mind that we're a team of like 30 and we're reading 1,200 questionnaires. So we want as much detail as possible and in as concise a manner as possible. So we want to know, like, there's people who will use words that, like, I'll have to look up. I mean, one of the words I got to learn this year was shibari. I didn't know what that was. And I know what it is. I just didn't know that there was a word for it. You know what I mean? So but tell us everything. And if it's something that you're like, you know what, we may do this Wednesday, we may do this Tuesday, we're not really sure, put that down. And then you can email us at placement@burningman.org and say, you know what, that's going to be on Wednesday, or that's going to be on Tuesday, or that's not going to work out for us because the person who was going to do our yoga, the yogi isn't coming or can't make it or whatever. Just email us and update us, because we also know we're asking for our questionnaires earlier this year. And especially this year, it's really, really hard because it's been 2 years. COVID has happened. We've been through a pandemic. Who knows what's going to happen between March and August? That's a long period of time this year, especially. But yeah, update us, put it in, and then just update us as time goes on.
Okay, that helps a lot.
And then there's the post-playa report that you can say, hey, we planned these things and this was too ambitious, or the thing that we planned blew up on the way. And, it gives more chance for feedback. And I think that's one of the great things that came out of this process was getting more feedback with Survey Squad. That's like giving, talking to folks and getting information to bring back to placement and the post-placement questionnaire and all these other things is all, where it doesn't feel like, placement gets your questionnaire, they put you down, and then that's all. That's it. All this new information is gonna be great for everybody.
I think just going into the information cycling too on this, I think there was a hope and desire in the process as we were designing this to do two things to utilize the criteria in this way. One is that for smaller camps, you could describe your interactivity at relative scale so that placement could have a clear understanding of what you were doing, and that we could celebrate and support the janky and give you have a clear understanding of what you wanted to do, right? And at the same time, as the camps got larger and increased in size, that there was capabilities to list more and more and more to explain why the camp was getting bigger and bigger and bigger, so that there was a correct linear increase in information as the size of camp got bigger, that the criteria scaled efficiently in terms of data collection so that we could have a clear understanding of what was happening.
And that's one of the things we really talked about a lot is as your camp grows, your interactivity should grow commensurate. And what was the phrase we used? It was a really good phrase. I should go look it up.
Commensurate with your size?
Commensurate, but no, yeah, but basically, part of the question that we asked there is, all right, you have 150 people now. Does it really take 150 people to do the thing that you're trying to do or not? And ask yourself that question. So we talked about formulas, like, oh, for every 50 people, you should have X many hours. And like, no, stop, don't do that. Just ask yourself a simple question. Are you doing something that really takes 150 people to do? So if you think about it, you start thinking the steps. 11 aid stand, how many people does that take? 5 people, something a little bit larger. Running a bar, maybe you need 20 people for that. But there's some of these camps, like the big sound camps, where they are welding giant cages that are going to be carried into the sky with lasers and whatnot. Do they need 200 people to do that? They kind of do, So thinking about, and I think when we talked about commodity camps and whatnot, it felt like a lot of them started with the number. Like, oh, we've got 200 people that want to go to Burning Man. So what do we have to do to
Get placement.
get placement to earn that. No, don't think about that. Go the other way around. Say, we have this cool thing we want to do. We want to have a Mecha Godzilla with lasers and flaming. How many people are going to need for that? And if you think about it from your offering, your gift, your idea, your project first, and not just how am I get 200 people out there, you just can't go wrong. And it looks like you found the matching interactivity.
Yeah, I just popped it in from the criteria, that little bit.
Proportionally, the camp size, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
So it doesn't, it helps a little bit, but, having it explained out to you, I think helps to understand. And I think camps are coming from a thought of, we want to do this cool thing on the playa. And that's the first thing you think, you kind of can't go wrong. I see some hands.
I think starting with Jen.
Okay, so speaking to that, we are one of those camps that's grown considerably, and part of it is because of the more offerings that we're wanting to do. But the other part is that with more offerings, we felt that we needed more support staff as well, like not staff, but support folk. So for example, our camp is going to, for the very first time, be offering a meal plan with a full functioning kitchen. And so some of our folk would be providing that kitchen and evap and shower facilities for our camp. Does that make sense? Is that appropriate? Because that's not really increasing our interactivity to the outside, except that it's providing support for a camp to have energy to be able to be doing the things that they're doing that are interactive. Is that appropriate?
The big kind of piece, so there was it was first in the first phase of cultural direction setting, and then it kind of came through to this group and some other groups. So around like resources, like thinking, whether it's outside services literally, or just the things that you're doing internally for your camp. The biggest question to ask is this serving the interactivity of the camp? Is it enabling the public offering of the camp? Like that's the critical thing. When we looked into the convenience culture and the transactional exchanges, and that was a separate cultural direction setting group, but very connected into this one. It's one of the criteria in the camp placement criteria. The big challenge there is around, resources and kind of private stuff for the camp that's really just for the camp to enjoy, right? There's no public dimension to the camp, or it was a very limited public dimension to the camp, kind of like Demma was saying, like, all right, I guess we got to phone in some stuff for placement, but really we're just here to hang out and go to Burning Man. There's not that offering or interactivity on the other side of it, at least not intentionally in the same degree or the same spirit. So from where you're going with it, it sounds to me like it's in the right spirit of like, okay, yeah, we've got more people. We do recommend it's, some people play specific roles in a camp, like they're the sound person with very technical sound experience. So they, tend to work on sound. They may not work in the kitchen, vice versa. You might have someone in your camp who's really good in the kitchen, and like, they may be a little more introverted. They don't want to go out hanging out at the frontage of the camp, inviting people in. That's not their scene, right? That's all good. Where possible, it's nice to mix roles up, right? Like to, keep things moving and not just have the feeling of like, we're the staff, I would even watch some of the language, right? Like support folks, right? It can start to get kind of messy and people can start to feel like they're playing certain roles in the camp versus like, I'm, kind of like the performer versus the like fluffer, right? You don't want that to kind of come in. So it's a little
fair enough. But you speak to it exactly. What I'm trying to deal with and struggle with is that we have people with specialized skills. So we have our build crew who are fantastic at building, but are not interested in providing healing workshops, and they're not skilled at doing performance work. And exactly so. Where we have people who can fill multiple roles, we're super stoked about that. But where we don't, that was the big question for me was, is it appropriate for us to increase our camp size if, a quarter of the people in our camp are support for the camp and so that the other 3/4 can be out doing interactive exchanges?
Oh yeah.
I think there's a good line in the criteria about that I just dropped. Two things I just dropped in the chat.
Yeah, I
the
saw that.
first is the link to what the other Trippi, was it G3 that did participation?
It was 6.
G6. So G6 has a huge readout on their work. It's on this link here, participation and paying people, which gets into some of the nitty gritty trade-offs here. Like I said, there's not like a great line of saying what this looks like, but there's a lot of really great nuance there. The second, though, is this criteria section I think really helps here, which is, if asked, could you clearly explain how the total population of your campus contributes to the interactivity? And I think you brought up a great example with your build crew, right? It's like, okay, your build crew gets there. They're really great at building stuff. They slave in the hot desert with no wind breakup for 4 days to get the thing up. That feels like it contributed pretty significantly to your interactivity. Particularly if, they've also contributed to the cost share of the camp, and they're also actively participating in other ways, like they were part of your run.
Correct.
The difference though was like, okay, let's say you're not this camp, you're Camp B. Camp B hires their build crew. They don't contribute to the cost share, and they're earning a salary. That would clearly be a problem. And if you're expanding the camp to do that, just so other people can then not have any responsibility and go play, that feels like an issue with participation.
Yeah, I apologize. I own a business, and so I'm used to thinking in terms of staff, but I utterly misspoke. We don't pay anybody to do anything in our camp. We're all poor.
And people have different skill levels. I remember one build week, we had someone come out and they were getting frustrated because we were doing things with drills and hammers. And he's like, girl, I can't do any of this shit. He went, got some lemonade, and just brought lemonade around to people all day long. And do what you got to do. I would suggest everyone in camp should do a kitchen shift, because everyone should wash dishes at some point. A camp lead friend of mine had Diplo stay in her camp one year. And he's like, oh, I'll spend for you. Like, we don't do music, dude. You're washing dishes. And she made Diplo wash dishes all week long. And he loved it. He's like, oh, I'm just one of the people, one of the folks. So, it's one of those things, you know it when you see it. Is everyone feels like if you've got folks that aren't doing anything at all and other folks that are doing all the work, it starts to be really, really, really obvious.
I love that, Boy Scout. That's great. The young kids in the camp, they have to mist everybody. Yeah, the kids can play a role too. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I think y'all are getting it. You got about 5 minutes left.
The only other, I want to pull out one other theme really quick. I think it's just a good one, as camp leads and it came up in this process as well, around the tension between structure and emergence, especially with something like uniqueness, right? Because I don't know about you, but my style, and when I ran camps and, I'm a bit of a schedule person. I'm a bit of part of why I ended up in a leadership role in the camp is I could pull all the pieces together, and the spreadsheets and the process and the, logistics and the this and then that. And so I've got a skill and structure, right? I'm pretty good at that. That shows up all over my life. A lot of theme camp leads might relate to that in some, why did you end up in the role that you're in? You probably have some gifts in leadership, right? And pulling things together in process and herding cats, right? Whatever that skill is. But there's also a lot of emergence, right? That comes up in Burning Man. And that's one of the beautiful things that happens. And that's where a lot of uniqueness comes through too. The moment when Hepkitten was talking about awkward hugs, it was just some joke, right? And all of a sudden it becomes the theme of your camp. And it wasn't on the schedule. It wasn't the thing you were planning back when you submitted your PCQ in, March now, right? But it just happened. And so being able to spot good ideas like that, that's often the stuff culture gets made out of, and many other contexts in my life, you see just something kind of bubbles up, something happens, and you're like, you just got to be able to make room for it and let it grow and just see where it takes you and get on the ride. And so just watching that tension in the camp, making space for that to happen, some of the most unique stuff is just going to happen that way. And if we're too tight about it all, we're gonna squeeze out all those fun little moments that can come through. So I just say watch that, even in your planning process, even in the meetings leading up and the work weekends and all that stuff. Make sure there's room for people to kind of let loose and see what cool ideas they can come up with, and that's where some of the really unique stuff's going to happen. So, and we're all going to benefit from that. That's the beauty.
We had a group in our camp that came up from LA. They couldn't get there until Saturday. We're done building. I was like, what are you guys going to do? And I don't know if y'all saw the movie Tu Wong Fu, where they just start throwing the fabric around and drag queen magic happens. That's what happened, because they took our camp and they took these fabrics and they put it up and they just like, okay, what y'all did is nice and sturdy. Now we're going to make it beautiful. And it's like, wow, it's like letting people find their way of doing that. With the last few minutes, let's just kind of throw out some form of appreciations, because that's what we like to end things with. I'll have to say I appreciate so much everyone dialing in from different places, special guest stars and whatnot, and just like recreating one of our meetings from back in the day, and everyone putting up with us kind of getting lost on our own little craziness. Any other appreciations? Just throw it out there.
I appreciate Andrew for helping play tech support today in community support. That's a often thankless role in these bigger things, but they're critical to getting everything done. And it's so nice to have Trippi back with us. It feels like we're finishing CDS right now. You know, that got stolen from us in 2020, and now we get to complete the cycle.
I think I kind of laugh because I appreciate you guys so much, and like missed all our meetings like for the last 2 years. It was really bad timing. So our meetings ended right as the pandemic started. So it was really kind of an unfortunate timing for us because we ended up being such good friends throughout the process that it was kind of sad. So it's nice to get to hear you guys talk and do this again. And it's also, I think, kind of appropriate for this meeting because it gives an inside look of how we actually did interact and how we did figure things out while we were in the middle of this whole thing.
And if you catch us in a bar on the playa, there and only there, you can ask us, what is the spider thing? Audience, any appreciations you want to throw out? We're just going to open it up.
Hey, thank you for everything you guys do on placement and putting up with our shenanigans, because I know I'm personally guilty of some of it over the last over half decade. And then thanks to Sammy. I see you over there. Put your screen on. Sammy for helping out. He was the tech guru, making
behind the scenes. Everything was flawless.
Oh, and come visit us on Polaris, the mutant vehicle, when you see us. Everybody's welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much for all the advice and the input. You've really helped me more than I can say. I was pulling my hair out. I'm one of those second years who in my first year volunteered just about everywhere. And now in my second year, I'm dialing it in and really trying to participate in camp creation. And I was feeling a little over my head. And now I'm feeling like I've got some good ground under me. So thank you so much, all of you.
All right, and folks, if you want to unmute yourself, turn your camera on. Let's set the view to gallery so we can see everyone. Go ahead and set that yourself, and give us some woohoos, like you're partying, like it's your first day on Playa year.
Thank you,
I just scared my
placement.
cat.
Thanks,
you, guys.
everybody.
Hepkitten, Trippi, Ratchet. Love you all.
Hi, Chika. Thank you.
My friends.
You hang up first, because I'm not going to hang up first.
Oh. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Adios.